Good morning. Let's talk about bad debts a little bit. What is bad debt? Especially bad debt on unpaid goods sold. We'll talk about if you can deduct it as a bad debt and where can you deduct it and how you should deduct bad debt on your business tax. So first, what is bad debt on unpaid goods sold? So if you are in a retail business and you sell goods and you sold to a client or a customer, but then for some reason you didn't collect payment right away and you try multiple times to collect payment without succeeding, that is a bad debt on your good sold. So can you claim bad debts on goods sold on your business tax return? Yes, you may. It depends on there is multiple things to take into consideration though. So let's get into that. So when can you claim bad debt on goods sold? If you are using cash accounting method and because with the cash accounting method you take your income into consideration when you actually receive it, not when you earn it, when you actually receive it. So when you are using cash method, you may not need to include bad debts. So that means when you sold something to someone, a good, a physical item, and you did get paid, so that means you will have a record of all those attempts that you try to collect payment. So just in case you get audited, you have that. So if you are using cash method, you may not even need to report a bad debt. You don't include the income among your income of the goods sold, but you include the cost of the good that you didn't collect payment on among your goods sold. So let's see that you have sales, so that means the income will be zero and cost of that good sold, you'll have that cost of goods sold included among the cost of your goods sold, but you won't have the portion of that income included in your income. So reporting less incomes, when you report all the cost of your goods sold, automatically decrease the total income that you earn that year, therefore decreasing your taxes as well. So you don't need to claim bad debt in that situation. If you use accrual method, and in accrual method you report the income when you earn it. So if you include the income in your taxes, for instance, and later you didn't collect that payment, then you have a bad debt. So you will include that bad debt in your business tax as, but that same amount you include for income, you will include it as bad debt. But if you are using cash method, it's just the cost of the goods sold that you will account for among the cost of goods sold. Nothing will be under bad debt. So I have my note here. I wanted to make sure that I'm covering every part of what I wanted to discuss. So if you are using cash method and you sold something for $500, so that means you have the cost of the good and then you have the profit. So if you include that $500 as income in 1 year and then you didn't collect it, so the following year you can include that 500 as bad debt and deduct it. So if you are using the cash accounting method and you sold it for 500 and you report it as income but you didn't collect it, well, you can report that 500 as a bad debt as well. But if you sold it for 500 but you didn't collect that money and you didn't include in your income when you're filing your taxes, then that your total income for the year will be 500 short. But assuming that the cost of the good is $300 in that 500, then you include that $200 or $300, whatever the cost of the good is, among your cost of the good sold. So that's how you'll do it. So how do you claim bad debt from sales as bad debt? Like I was talking about it before, you claim the cost of the good sold. So when you sell something to somebody and assuming that you are going to include that items that has not been paid for as bad debt, you can only include the cost of goods sold. So if you don't want to include the cost of goods sold on the cost of goods sold, you want it to specify as bad debt, you can only deduct the cost of the goods sold. You cannot deduct the profit. So if you sold the items for $500 and your profit is $300, you can only deduct as bad debts that $200. So that means you didn't even include that 500 in your income. So you sold it for 500, you didn't collect the payment, so there is no income you reported. So you deduct that $200 cost of goods sold as bad debt. If that you choose to use the bad debt row, depending on what kind of business entity you have, or you can just include it within the category of cost of goods sold. But remember, you can only claim the cost of goods sold on your taxes as bad debts if you have not reported that income previously. You can only report the cost of goods sold, not the profit, just the cost of goods sold as bad debt, or just among the total cost of goods sold for the year. You just accounted for that goods sold that you have not been paid for. And the same thing will go for exchange. I won't say exchange or return. You know, when you ship something to a customer and then the customer does not receive the item and you had to ship it again, so you will include the cost of those two items among the cost of goods sold. And for the income section, you only accounted for the income once, what the customer paid for, and among the cost of goods sold, you accounted for the item twice, because it cost you took out of your inventory the items twice, but you got paid for it once. So that will be similar. It's not a bad debt, but it's kind of loss for you as well. So I will include that in this session. So what do you want to talk about will be, where do you claim your bad debt on your business tax return? Where do you claim the bad debt on sales, for instance? So if you are using Schedule C, it will go on line 27, other deduction, but that's a line that you don't fill out right away. So you scroll all the way to the bottom. I'll show you for shortly. You scroll all the way past cost of goods sold section. You scroll past a mileage section all the way to the end of Schedule C form, and you will see, I believe is part 5 and other deductions. So you'll list it there, and the total on line 48 will be reported on line 27. So your bad debt will be reported on Schedule C by 5 other deductions, and that will be total on line 48 there. So where do you report your bad debt on sales? On your L.L.C business tax return form 1065. You'll report that on line 2, bad debt. And where do you claim your bad debt on sales of goods on for your S corporations form 1120S? You report that on form 1120S line 10, I believe. So let me pull out those forms and we can take a look at where those are. Let me see if I can. I'm not sure I should bring it there, but let me see if I will be able to show you my screen here. I need to make sure I'm showing you the right. Oh. So we are on Schedule C here. Let me scroll all the way up. And Part 2 expenses, there is no special row line for bad debt. So automatically that will go on line 27A, other expenses. But you won't put it here right away. So you will scroll all the way down past Part 3, cost of goods sold, past Part 4, and Part 5 here. Let me see if I can go. So Part 5, you will list the bad debt here, the cost of goods sold, or if you have previously reported, then the full amount you reported but you have not collected, you'll report it there, and the total on line 48 will be listed here on line 27. So that's where your bad debt for Schedule C will be. And remember, if you sold the items and you didn't collect payment because the person wanted to pay cash for it but didn't pay you, and after multiple attempts you didn't collect it, instead of using bad debt section, well, when you didn't collect the amount, you don't report in the income because you are using cash method. You can just include that portion of the payment that is the cost of the goods sold amount, your cost of goods sold line 42. You can include it there, and that will just account for that cost for you, but you don't include the profit. So that means your income section here on line 1 will be short that amount that the customer didn't pay, but your cost of goods sold will account for that item cost. That's the best way to claim bad debt on goods sold that were not paid for and the income was not included previously in your business tax return. So for 1065 L.L.C owners, you will use line 12 here. Let me see if I'm, and that's, if I go, you will see it. 1065 portion of bad debt is here on line 12. So you will use bad debt section if you already include the income, the that amount in your income and you have not collected, then you will include that amount as bad debt. But if the person didn't pay you and that's a good, then you can just do the same. The inventory will account for that cost, the cost of the goods sold, but your income won't include the cost of goods sold. But if you are using accrual method and you accounted for that income and you didn't collect it, then you will use the bad debt section to report it. So for 11S, for S corporation businesses, you will claim your bad debt on line 10, and that's here, line 10, bad debts. And again, if you are selling good, you are in the business of manufacturing good to sell, and the client didn't pay for the good purchase, you just don't include the income in the total income here, and in the cost of good sold, you'll fill up form 1125A and you accounted for that cost of good sold, but you don't account for the income. So that means you are deducting your cost but not the profits. But if, and that work well for cash method, but if you choose accrual method and you accounted for that already in your income, yeah, well, you can use the bad debt section to report it. And if you are using accrual method and you is still within the same year, you can still adjust your journal entry to have everything accurate, so that you don't include in income while you didn't collect, but you include in your expenses, your cost of goods sold, the cost of good sold. So once again, when you are selling good and you have a bad debt, an account receivable was not collected, you can only claim the cost of the good sold. You cannot claim the profit, just the cost of the good sold. Thank you for watching. I'm Afiavi Ojune Liberman, creators of Liberman Consulting LLC YouTube channel, owners of Nina Soap. Our blog and our natural products store, ninassoap.com, and our apparel store, label.com. Thank you for watching our videos. Thank you for subscribing, and thank you for all your comments. We appreciate it.